Do you ever wish you could pick up some book and just read the story of mathematics? Read a story that would make you feel like you were a mathematician or a scientist sitting somewhere, in a dimly lit observatory or library on a hill somewhere in the middle of the night, understanding all of these numbers and patterns and ideas and concepts and equations, and a story that made you feel like you were there and that made you feel so curious and excited about the world and about math. Like, we've got textbooks, right? This actually isn't a school one that I have, but I've never quite gotten around to it, at least not past chapter 1. Though it has a great introduction. Maybe I'll read it at some point. This one's cool. It's got pictures. But I mean, this one's got somewhat of a story too, so that's pretty cool. Also haven't gotten around to more than like chapter 2. But this one's cool. It's one of my favorites. Actually got pretty far in it. It was one of my proofs classes. Wait a minute. I don't know. I think we got pretty far. I actually would go through this book again, so maybe I will. The point is, so if I close my eyes, can I come up with a story of mathematics? I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to turn off the light. The wonders of the universe. Do you ever worry, like, getting too into mathematics is about getting into perfection or just wanting perfection, rather than all the nuances that come with physical reality? What is math and patterns and this whole universe that we live in? Okay, let me try this. So I close my eyes and I imagine there's this book. The book has a red cover, a red binding. There's no title, but it has some gold weaving lines on the top above the red. And it's not that big of a book. Maybe about 300 pages, maybe a little bit more. But I pick it up, and when I open it, there's an image right on the inside front cover. And it's got the image of a bunch of people having a good time. And these people are mathematicians. But they're all together. Somewhere in a classroom or, something like a classroom or a cozy room. There are some tables. Maybe there's a blackboard. Math remains something that can be done on a blackboard and on paper. Even new math in this modern age. Yeah, computers help and can make all these wonderful images and animations, and it's amazing. And trying to make the basics of a new math, you can still use a pencil and paper. And in fact, that's what this book invites you to do. It invites you to create a new math. Because maybe that's not as hard as we think it is. Math is about patterns, and it's about definitions. It's about precise definitions and elegant definitions and elegant proofs, which are explanations. It is the art of the explanation of ideas. And so, how does this book begin? Opposite of the inside front cover, you'll see that the book is somewhat older. Like the way that you could make a book or paper look old by putting coffee stains on it, making the paper not white. But this book has gotten so, or has this image because it really is somewhat older. And on this first page that you see, there's one word. Introduction. You turn the page that says introduction, and there is none. There is no introduction. Because darkness and light, the blankness of a page, the darkness and the blank, that is where all ideas and creations stem from. Darkness is the largest canvas on which one could paint. So maybe it's blank, but maybe it's painted black. So the introduction, when you turn the page, there are no words, it's just painted black. But it is an introduction, because you look at it, and at first you see nothing. And where do patterns come from anyway? Do we really know? Do we really know if they're in our mind or in physical reality? I don't know. Then we turn the page again, and this time there's an envelope. Well, an envelope taped to one of the pages, and it specifically says the words, an invitation. You open the envelope and you can take out the letter that's inside. And it's a personalized invitation to you And it has this poem. A poem about doors. It says, "Open a door, see what you haven't before. Imagine a world unimaginable. From one door to the next, each holds within the unique possibility to or not to exist. It could be an idea or just empty space. Something on which you have the power to create." Or it says, "Open a door, see what you haven't before. Imagine a world unimaginable. A door is a second, a minute, a day, a lifetime, a memory, a page, one turn away." An invitation for you to see each of these pages as a door. A door which, when you open, you don't know what's going to be there or not. Don't write the book before you've read it. That's a funny phrase. I think what I mean by that is often when I'm reading books, I try to figure out what's going to happen next, or even on the next page. And that's kind of like me writing the story in my head before it's happened, before I've read it. And maybe instead of doing that, just leave my mind open. Don't write what I think is going to happen, just wait and see. Because I would write all the possibilities, and maybe I would get too caught up in my own imagination that I wouldn't even see the words that already exist, the story that I'm actually reading. And then you turn the page again, and there's an image of a door, because it's asking you to step through the door into the world of patterns and mathematics. And when you turn this page, the words begin. And these words say, "I know you are reading these words, and I know you don't know where they lead. But I ask you to trust me, because I'm about to guide you in the adventure that you could never foresee." Let's begin with the word math. We throw it out the window. Out the window. And we're going to use the word patterns. How often do you think about patterns? Do you see them everywhere you go? Do you imagine them? Do you know that we can choose absolutely any objects we want to work with? Absolutely any definitions we want to use, and make new math from here? Is that what it actually says? Maybe not. How about the first page says, go, make new math, make new patterns, or discover them. And then the next page says, you think I'm making a joke, don't you? You think that you can't make new math, that so much math already exists and has been created and discovered, and there's too much of it, it's too complicated, that only the brightest people who have been studying it for years and ages can make something new. You think I'm joking when I'm telling you to do it. Well, I'm not. Because it doesn't matter how much you know or how long you've studied math. You don't have to be a genius or a prodigy. All you need is your imagination. And all you need is to understand what patterns in math really are. Because watch, I'll make a new math right now as I'm writing this. It'll be your first example. Because I'll tell you who I am. I'm not some genius mathematician. I couldn't tell you any sort of calculations off the top of my head. But I can tell you I've got an imagination. And so here is a new math. What's a question that we can start with? A shape, a number, what's something I like? What's a pattern that we can look for? How about we have this dot. Let's start with a dot on a blank page. And let's say we have a letter A. Or let's say we have all these different letters of the alphabet. Let's take the English alphabet. What if we dissect every single letter into its components? Let's say the uppercase letter A is made up of 3 lines. And let's say the uppercase letter B is made up of a line and 2 curves. And let's say the uppercase C is made up of 1 curve. And what would happen if we took apart every single one of these letters into their components? How many letters would have the same components? And what if we said that if 2 letters can be split up into the same components, that they're the same thing? For example, the letter T and the letter L. If they're both made up of 2 lines, they're the same letter. Let's define it that way. And then a lowercase b would be equal to an uppercase P. And an F would equal to an A, because an F has 3 lines and an A has 3 lines. So now let's say that we split up everything into components. Now, let's take the most common words that there are that people use in English. For example, the, or a, or something. And let's see which letters we can switch out based on the ones that we've said are equal to each other. So then we have words that would be equal to each other, given our definitions. That if we switched a T with an A, that those words would be equal to each other. And let's say that the order of the letters didn't matter. Let's pretend. So let's say we have the letters T, H, and E. The letter T is made up of 2 lines. The letter H is made up of 3 lines. And the letter E, let's use all uppercase for the moment, is made up of 4 lines. Though if we use the lowercase e, it would be like a curve and a line? It would be probably 3 of the quarter curves and then a line. Maybe. I guess that depends on how we write it. So let's stick to uppercase. So we have the T with 2 lines, we have the H with 3 lines, and we have the E with 4 lines. Now, we know that an L is also made up of 2 lines, and we know that an A is also made up of 3 lines, just like an F is. So we have the word the, T-H-E. But now let's say we took out the T and we substituted it with an L. That's not a word we currently have, but we would consider those 2 things equal. The L-H-E with the T-H-E. And we could also consider the L-T-H-E the same thing as H-T-E, the same thing as H-E-T, the same thing as, if we switch the H with an A, we would have T-A-E, which would be the same thing as T-E-A, because we're using the same shapes. Different order, but we're not counting that right now. And so, in this math, we're treating the letters as their own new shapes, but we have components that we can divide them by, and we've made a certain rule about how symmetry or identity exists, because we're saying that a letter is the same, we're defining it as the same, if its components are the same number and type of component, which is either a line or a curve, and the number of those. And we would split up the curves into probably quarter curves or half curves, because, like, for example, for the letter E, we might need a quarter curve, maybe. So, and then we've defined words as being the same in this math universe if they are made up of the same components too. And so we actually have a bunch we can explore now. We can explore how many components do certain words have? We can answer that question. We can answer the question of, which letters equal each other, which words equal each other, and what is the minimum number of letters you need to reach. Are there words where the number of components from the whole word rather than the individual letter match each other, even though one word has more letters and another has less? And could we make a certain rule in which we take the words that we have in English that actually give us meaning and use a specific math transformation where we change them into another one of these same letters, but which one we change it into is based on a mathematical formula. And this is like, we have encryption, right? We have like coding and encryption and decryption and all sorts of things where we can change, letters into code or letters into numbers, and we change those numbers into, we do math with those numbers, and then we change those numbers into other numbers, and suddenly, unless you have the prime number that you need, you can't decrypt it. But maybe you can. But let's say we're using our shapes, and let's say we make a new sort of way of encrypting it based on the rules that we've given. And then Then, what if we take all the letters from all the languages that exist and make them be the base shapes that we're working with? And what if we compare the components of all the shapes in all the languages? And then we could answer which letter is the most complicated one that we've come up with. But is every single letter in a written language essentially like a line or a curve or a dot or something? Are we using the same basic shapes in every language? I don't know where I've gotten to. Maybe I don't know how to write this book yet, but I wish I could read it. Maybe this isn't how I wish it would go. Maybe we have the book and we have the picture, and then we have the first page that we open. And maybe it tells us a story. Maybe it starts with once upon a time. Once upon a time, there was a girl who loved math, who loved patterns. No, that's not a good piece of writing. In writing, we must show, not tell. You can't use the word like or think or any of those. we must show using actions. Once upon a time, there was a girl, and she was able to see images when she closed her eyes. They weren't the clearest images, they were somewhat blurry, but she knew her imagination was wild. There I go again with telling instead of showing. Once upon a time, there was a girl, and when she closed her eyes, she could see images. And she'd lay in bed at night and close her eyes and ask the universe, "Can you show me something I don't know yet? Can you show me some new pattern? Something so curious and interesting?" Then she'd go to sleep and she'd wake up, and either she wouldn't remember anything, or it was a regular dream. She dreamt of an experiment where this group of cats was taken on a boat to an island, and another group of cats was flown into the sky. And the group of cats on the boat, the experiment was that they were only allowed to eat chocolate and nothing else. And with each week, the chocolate bar got bigger. And every single cat took the experiment differently. One cat noticed what was happening. One cat had kept the chocolate bar he got the first week, and when a few weeks passed, he was explaining to the other cats, like, "Hey, don't you notice how big this chocolate's gotten?" And the other cats, they didn't notice because they didn't keep any memories from the first week. But this cat brought out his chocolate bar from the first week, and the one from this week was so much bigger. And a different cat was so thirsty that some of the cats were like, "It's okay, we'll just sneak you in some apple juice." And then a different cat goes like, "Well, have you tried water?" And that first cat, who was really thirsty, was like, "But we're not allowed to have anything besides chocolate." And all the other cats look at him like, "You mean you haven't been drinking water either? You thought the instructions were so literal that it's only chocolate and you can't have water? You know you need water to live, right?" And a different cat wasn't totally following the instructions, was sneaking in fruit here and there, knowing that it's healthier and wanting it. And so this girl wakes up from her dream and she says, "Okay, that was a dream, now I go about my day." And she went about her day and everything was kind of normal. She went to work. She had lunch and ate food. She thought about going outside, but she looked at her shoes. She put on her shoes, but then she went to make a cup of tea. She made a cup of tea and she sat down and she looked out the window. And she realized she wanted to call the eye doctor to set up an appointment for her eyes. And by the time she was done with that, it was time to get to work again. So she took her shoes back off. And everything has its seasons. And every single story has a day when something changed or something happened and something new began, and maybe this one does too. But maybe we don't know what it is yet. Do you need to know math and the way it's written, the way we've all decided on it to be written, in order to make new math, new patterns? Don't know. There's this man who can make a glowing ball of energy with his hands. But inside this glowing ball of energy, there's formulas flowing around. But then there's static. There's static, and it's just golden white. And it's rainbow colors. And we zoom in, and then there's darkness, and one raindrop falls onto the floor. But that raindrop falls through the floor, and it keeps falling. Yet it's separate from the water. And it becomes an octopus. And it becomes Squidward. And Squidward swims down and then back up. And suddenly he flies out of the water into this place where there's a stage and there's a barn and there's some rainbow colored hot air balloon. And there's this one mathematician, and he rips the stage. He rips the background. He rips this space-time continuum. And he steps through. And everything's gone. It's just black and dark and still. He can't hear anything and he can't see anything. He can't see his hands. He can't hear his thoughts. His breathing. And suddenly, he understands the quote. You don't always know who you are, where you are, what you are, but you always know that you are. And so he feels that he exists. There's nothing more true than that. He feels that he exists. What is that? Sometimes I want to be able to see patterns because I want to make new math. I want to show people how fun it could be. But I'm not meant to be a genius. I'm not meant to have it just appear, maybe, out of nowhere. Because for most people, that's not what it's going to be. There's a few people in this world who probably can see and understand in ways that even I can't even imagine, and maybe I don't even want to. Because their minds see something so different. But sometimes I want to be able to see, so for the fame of it. But what if I don't want the fame of it? Then what for? Why play with numbers and patterns? Because this feeling of existence that you keep brushing up against, the deeper you get into exploring patterns, the more you get to exploring it yourself, rather than just memorizing something from a textbook and seeing something emerge, a formula, that explains a pattern or something. The more you feel that there's something that exists outside of you that cannot be named. And it feels really not so different than when you feel that you exist. It feels like the same thing. It is you, you are it, the patterns, the design. For this is some sort of game, some sort of design. And some things are really quite simple. observation and existence. It's the observation of existence. When you create math or discover math, whether it's something that's been discovered before or not, you are the creator. You are saying, let there exist, or there exists, or let, X equal whatever. You are calling with your words, with your imagination. You are calling something into existence. The power of that is in math unlike anything else. I mean, in a story too, right? In words and writing. But in math, we have these patterns and these objects, and they speak. We call something into an existence, and we can ask it questions, talk to it, and it answers. Because we're not dictating every single move that happens after. Maybe like with a story, like you can do with a written story. But with math, it's a painting, and it speaks to you. It's different than just painting or writing, even though one could argue, or artists could argue that, in painting and writing, same thing, right? Like, you start something and then the rest just appears, and, you follow it rather than choose and design it. Or at least it could be the case, but there's something about math and patterns that's different. By doing math, you are the most powerful, and you are touching existence and observation while dealing with concepts such as zero that essentially don't even exist, evade observation, the non-existence of observation, or infinity. Anyway, I don't think I'm gonna get more information or ideas today, so I'm going to bed. But maybe one of these days I'll get closer to what it is that I'm talking about. We'll see.